Hi, this is the whale. As you can see, I'm in shadows right now, and the reason being is that it's in your best interest that the selections I give you are not known to be coming from me. I'm very well known in the casino industry for my round-robin systems and the fact that I've won a lot of money with small bankrolls in short periods of time. By not revealing my identity, this allows you to use the same system that I've had tremendous success with for 3 decades without getting shut down quickly by the sportsbooks realizing that it's the same person, the same system that's beaten them many times before. Starting when I was 13 years old, I was giving selections on games to many people who were profiting from my picks, and so I was able to make money starting at a teenage era. After my teenage years, when I turned 21 and was allowed to place bets for myself, I went around to multiple sports books with this round-robin system as I was perfecting it. I would catch hot streaks. In certain instances, I would be told that I won more money off my round-robins than that sports book would be making for the entire year. I would say that I've taken under $1,000 and run it into eventually hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, or even $10 million back in the 90s and the Mirage days. I've taken under $1,000 into hundreds of thousands probably over 100 times in my betting history, and I've taken into $1 million tens of times, and then in the 90s I took it to over $10 million. My pinnacle, when I was introduced to Pinnacle through a friend, I started with $50,000 and ended up with $4 million after 4 days. The ability to accelerate when you're hot dwarfs any periods of time where you're not hot. So this is something that I want to explain a little more in detail for you so you can get excited about how this works. You could take 8 round robins in a row and not hit any of them. And so now you're out 8 units if you consider a round robin a unit. The next one hits, it pays back 7 units. So you're slightly down. And then you turn around and you take, as the system tells you, you take more units on the next round robins. One of the next round robins hits, you're way into the black, and then another one hits, you're at a point where you've made 20, 30 times your money right off the bat, and that's after suffering an extremely cold streak to start. Typically, I don't hit cold streaks right off the bat, but even if you do, and it does happen to me once or twice a season where I'll catch a cold spell, the cold spell only ends up losing 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 units, but the hot streak creates hundreds of positive units. Is that you can take a really small, relatively small amount, an affordable amount to risk, and end up walking away with hundreds of thousands of dollars in a short period of time. For example, recently, last year, I took $500 and a friend of mine took $300, and we were able to run it up to my end. I ended up with $180,000, and he ended up with about $40,000 in a couple of weeks. Let me tell you how that works, because that sounds, I'm sure, the first time you hear it, like that's impossible. But the accelerator system takes big jumps when there's a hot streak. If you take $500 on a round robin that pays back $3,500, so you've gone from $500 to $3,500, now the system tells you to go ahead and put 1/3 of that profit, the $3,000, onto the next series of round robins. So your next round robin's at $1,000, which pays back $7,000. Well, if you hit them back to back to back, all of a sudden you've turned $500 into $15,000, $20,000 in three bets. This system comes up with a lot of plays too, so that could actually happen within a couple days. Now you're playing with round robins of $5,000 at a time, and they pay back $35,000. So then the next stage of it, you're betting round robins. You're gonna have to, in Nevada, you have to spread it out to be able to pull this off, because at this point you're dealing with amounts beyond what most of the casinos will take. But you're taking round robins of $12,000, $13,000, and each one of those, any one of them hits, they pay in the 90s, $90,000 or $100,000. So that's how quickly it happens. So the system takes a small amount of money, and I remember going to Caesar's Palace, the high and mighty Caesar's Palace, thinking that they would continue to take any amount of action, and had the supervisor tell me, your betting limits are now $100. I said, are you kidding me? You're Caesars. You don't do that. And they go, well, with you, we're just really not interested in your action. We recommend you go somewhere else. And I asked at that point, well, who does take action? And they mentioned that Binion's downtown in the Mirage, Steve Wynn's Mirage. So after beating multiple casinos for the full amount that they would allow me to, actually quite likely closing one of the private ones on the Strip, and creating tremendous losses for the others, I stumbled upon the Mirage Sportsbook. And at that point, I really felt like I had died and gone to heaven. When I made my first round robin bet, it paid around $92,000 or $94,000. And I went up to cash the ticket, thinking that sirens were going to go off and supervisors were going to come to approve everything. And a little old lady said to me, do you want chips or cash? I said, are you kidding me? You don't need approval on to pay out this ticket, and you've got the availability to pay me in cash. And she says, chips or cash, sir? And I said, okay, cash. And boom, she paid me. And I remember telling my brother at that point, even though this was a quite homely older lady, I said, that's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. So I was able to turn a small amount of money into $90-something thousand on my first foray at the Mirage. Then I got to know the assistant sports director and the sports director and asked them, I said, would you allow me to continue at higher and higher rates on these round robins? And their response was, sure, we take more action here than anybody, and Steve Wynn's not afraid of the action, so go for it. So I said, okay, are you sure? And they said, yeah. Well, that turned into a multi-million-dollar run very, very quickly. So the game changed at that point, and I had to become a casino player to take some of the heat off the sports book for the fact that I was winning so much at the sports book. So I'd go play craps and blackjack or whatever, didn't care whether I won or lost. It was just, the whole point was to take a certain percentage of my profit, throw it back in. I even played high limit slots just to give the sports book some coverage that, hey, I'm a crazy casino player, and you know, I'm going to end up losing the money back in the casino I win in the sports book, so they're going to be fine overall. Then it got to the point where they started saying, well, you have to come in, you know, an hour or two before the game so that we can try to offset your action. And when I would go in, right after I would make my plays, the loudspeaker would announce all of the point changes. Every single team I took, they would move the point spread, try to get people to bet the other side. The way sportsbooks work, most of you may know this, some of you might not. It's an interesting point though. The sportsbooks, what they're trying to do is even out the betting. They really don't care whether one team is more likely to win versus another on the spread. That's where it becomes a game of skill. They just want to make sure that if $100,000 bet on a game, that as close as possible, 50,000 is bet on one side and 50,000 is bet on another. So you have the general public bettors against what are called the Sharpies, or the people that make a living off sports. The fact that many people make a living off sports proves to you that it's a game of skill. There's two games of skill in the casino. That's the sports betting and poker. And both of them, the casino is just taking a rake off the action. They're taking a percentage of the play, and in the sportsbook side, their goal is to even out the betting as much as they can. So for me, that makes it an interesting challenge. I have a strong background in mathematics and statistical analysis and pattern recognition. I score off the charts on IQ tests when it comes to pattern recognition. Since I was very young, I've had a real strong mind for that. Add the fact that I've got 30 years or more experience with games and understanding the emotions of the games and understanding the patterns that teams fall into at different times of the seasons, and whether they react well after a win or react well after a loss. These are all things that fall into patterns over the course of time.